The number one question I've gotten all season is, what is this black stuff and where can I get it? So this one's for you guys. Everyone loves the idea of using this weed barrier landscape fabric, and there are perks to it, but there's also reasons not to use it. So in this video, I'm gonna go over why we have it, what it's doing for us, what it can do for you, why you might not want to use it, and also some resources for where to get it. This is a really high grade, like nursery grade level landscape fabric. It's a woven fabric, so that means that, you know, it's pieces going together. Because it's woven, water can go through it and it can breathe a little bit, but also because it's woven, it means if you cut it, it will fray. So you always have to make sure that you're melting the plastic anytime you make a cut in it, or it'll just fall apart. This fabric is also UV protected. It should last for up to 5 years. So this isn't just one season solution. This is something we can use again and again. This is our first year farming, and we only just created this farm plot, you know, back in April. So we have had a lot of issues with it. And one of our biggest concerns when we went to go to start growing things in it is, see this beautiful, lush, happy grass? Yeah, this is the worst. This is couch grass or quack grass or crabgrass. It has a bunch of different names, but basically it is a really aggressive, invasive grass that is really, really hard to get rid of. And when we first prepped up the location for our farm, we saw just endless, like millions and millions and millions of pieces of the roots for this, which meant that, you know, in the matter of a couple weeks of watering, it was gonna just turn straight into this. It was gonna be an entire field of grass. So because of that, we started to look at the landscape fabric. A big portion of our farm was gonna be devoted to doing these head lettuces, and it was going to have a set growing space. You know, so we knew that getting the landscape fabric, we could burn these holes for putting our transplants in, and we'd be able to work with it. And as you can kind of see here, there, you know, other than a piece here and there really isn't that much grass coming up. The landscape fabric has done an excellent job of keeping the weeds down. You know, only on occasion do a few weeds start to grow around the side of the seedling when they're small, and by the time they get big, it is gonna shade out. No weeding, and no weeding is pretty amazing. We put together a really quick and basic watering system this year, and so the whole farm is just being watered with these overhead sprinklers. Putting down landscape fabric, it works really well if you can put in like a drip line underneath the fabric, but we just didn't have the infrastructure for that. And even though it was just, you know, sprayed right on there, the water worked really well to get through that plastic. It's amazing how well the weave has worked. Here's an example of pouring some water out onto it. It pools a little bit, but it pretty quickly just pours through. With how amazing this has worked out, you would probably ask, why didn't we do this in our entire garden? And so let me show you. Here's a nice weedy spot full of that horrible grass where it would have been amazing if I didn't have to weed it. But as you can see, what I have planted here, I have planted in rows. And you can't have the landscape fabric for rows because you need to have the openings. There's no way you can kind of have a strip of this fabric and have it do the job. And when it comes to doing things like carrots or my beets or, you know, so many of the things that we grow here, it all is getting planted in rows very, very quickly using my seeder. So it works great when you're doing the transplants into the burnt holes. It's actually fairly easy to pull the finished plants right out of those holes to then replant, but let me show you an example of another way to grow with it up at my flower farm. We also use some of the landscape fabric up here for the flowers, most of these we had as transplants that got planted into the holes, and they also, you know, I knew I was growing lots of the same thing, so I could burn holes to a set spacing that I wanted. But one of the flowers that I had up here, I didn't actually have any seedlings for it. And these I actually direct seeded into the dirt opening of the hole. So I just took the seeds and I poked it right into the ground there. Even though everything else kind of in this entire area was done from a transplant, these were just seeds in the ground, and as you can see, they've grown up fine. As the season's gone on, can't even tell the difference. So you can direct seed into the ground with the landscape fabric, but you can only just do it in the single opening spaces. No weeding. The plants grow super well. You don't need to get some crazy watering system. Why wouldn't I want to use the landscape fabric every single time I possibly could? So far this season, I've found areas where I have the landscape fabric down. I'm experiencing more fungal and pest issues than in areas where I don't have the landscape fabric down. And, you know, I don't exactly know why that is, but I suspect it's without the, like, fully open airflow that I normally get from exposed soil. There's just a lot of moisture. There's a lot of, you know, habitat for some of these, you know, these fungal diseases to grow. Like right here, this is kind of a good example. Like I'm getting kind of like black spotty fungal issues. You know, like this, all this in here. This is disease, and it's where we live. We don't get a lot of that because we're so dry. And so I think that even though the ground can breathe, it's not breathing as well as it would. Another issue is that there's been lots and lots of bugs, especially pests kind of like thripes or like whitefly that have these just continuous life cycles where you can get kind of like 6, 8, 10 generations of them in a single season. I think that it has become kind of this perfect breeding ground underneath the fabric. They can get in through the holes, and then they kind of have this just great place to lay their eggs and to, you know, to be protected. They're under the fabric, so all of the beneficial predator insects that we have aren't able to help us out with them. And so I've found that even though I've had zero weeding with this, it's been so great for the no weeding, and it's been so essential for us because we've had so many of these bad weeds this year. It might not be a great long-term solution for us if we can get our weeds under control. I'm also growing on a farm scale. You know, in this greenhouse, I have 100 tomatoes, 100 eggplants, 100 peppers. Most home gardeners are not going to be having that much space. So to be able to burn a set pattern into the fabric is going to be a little bit difficult. You might, you know, every year you grow a zucchini, 2 tomatoes, some lettuce, this and that, and you're not really going to want to have that in the same spot every year. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to lay this down on the top of your veggie box, even though it would be amazing to never have to do any of the weeding. It's just, it would be a lot of work to set it up for, you know, a system that might not work year after year after year. So I don't know that I can necessarily recommend it for, you know, your 4x8 home garden. But I know you guys are still super jealous and you want to get my landscape fabric. So down in the description of this video, we'll have a link to the source where we got our landscape fabric from. We're in Canada, and this is a great Canadian source. And we also found a really great Amazon link for it. And so we'll have an Amazon link for all of our American friends too, so then you guys can all find it. Bonus material. Why don't they just blow away? They're held in place by these landscape staples, So you just stab them through. They create a little bit of a tear in the weave, so we try to always stake them in the same spots, but it holds it down really well. There's not much weight to it, so it's hard for the wind to kind of get under there to really lift it and get it to fly away. And so we don't have to make a second video about this, we used a tiger torch to burn holes in the fabric. The first set we created a pattern so it could be a consistent thing that we kind of dragged along for the entire 50-foot length. But by a couple beds, we were done fussing with this. Our landscape fabric has lines on it, so we actually just, used the lines and eyeballed it, and you just tap it quickly with the tiger torch while it's on a really low heat, and it just melts out the circle perfectly, and it works really good. There's lots of really good video tutorials on YouTube specifically about how to use the tiger torch. We're bad at it, so we will not make that tutorial. We don't want to have to do more melting. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I'm glad we'll have our stuff already done for the next 5 years or more. So there you go, nursery grade woven landscape fabric. That is what we use. That's what the black stuff is on the farm. Hopefully this answered all of the questions you had about it and why we use it and why you should or shouldn't use it. But if you have any other questions, make sure to contact us over on Instagram or Facebook, or we have our email in all of our social media links are down below, because we don't have comments on this channel, but we love to hear from you guys.